This video I think you guys are really gonna like, especially for those of you who know who you are, who've come to remember who you are, okay? The twin flames. I did a video about the twin flames some time ago, and this is for you guys. My mom and I, we video chat at least one time a day, but most of the time 2 times a day. I love my mama. The other day I called my mom, and my mom said, before we get started, I got to tell you about a dream I had. My mother and I sometimes share dreams, and so does Lynn and I, and sometimes my mother will have dreams that are meant for me. And my mother had an amazing dream, and I want to share it with you now. In this dream, my mother was with her mother, my grandmother, and she's no longer with us. She died years and years ago. And they were sitting on a bed with my granddaughter, all right? Now, this is the granddaughter or the daughter of my firstborn son, or of my firstborn, all right? Her name is Tilly, all right? And so it was my grandmother, my mother, and Tilly on this bed. And my mother and grandmother were awake, but Tilly was sleeping. She told me that they were just talking, just like they were never had left off, and that there was a knock on the door, okay? And whenever she went and answered the door, there was an elderly black man standing there. She said that behind the black man were cows. And she said that the man was speaking to her. She said she can't remember what he was saying, but he was talking to her. But she noticed behind him in the cows that a tiger just pounced and jumped and was bouncing around in with the cows. And my mom said, oh wow, look at the tiger, look at the tiger. And she said that the man turned around to look, but he didn't see it. It was already hidden amongst the cattle. And my mom called for her mom, said, you gotta come see this, you gotta come see this. And she looked out and she couldn't see it either. And then she remembered Tilly, the granddaughter that was sleeping. And she was gonna wake her up and show her. And then she woke up. In the dream, there were 3 generations. There was my grandmother, my mother, and then it skipped my generation and my son's generation, and then went to my granddaughter. 3 generations. I immediately started thinking while I was meditating about the generations. And the generation of like my generation, it was the Generation X, okay? Everybody knows Gen Xers, right? Well, my grandmother's generation was known as the silent generation. And my mother's generation was known as the baby boomers. All right? And my generation was Generation X, and then there was Generation Y, then there was Z, and then we have the generation that is now. And my daughter, Linza, and my stepdaughter, Ira Pearl, are both part of this generation now. And they are called the Alphas. Remember Alpha and Omega? All right, in the dream, X and Y weren't there. But the other 3 generations were. And right now in our time, it seems as though I get along great with my son and daughter in America, and they're both from Generation Y, okay? But for the most part, Generation X and Generation Y seem like they are miles apart, okay? And that has happened on purpose, that we've been driven apart. The enemy separates, but love unifies, brings back together. And X and Y, it's X, Y, and Z. So X and Y are side by side, even though they're super close, but they seem like they're far apart, but they're not. They're actually side by side. 2 or 11. Okay. All right, some time ago I did a video about the twin flames and the volunteers. If you'll remember, whenever Lazarus died and the disciples were going to go there with Jesus, and Jesus is going to raise him from the dead, okay? And Thomas, who is known, that name means twin, he said something very peculiar. He said, "Let us go that we may die with him." Go die with Lazarus, okay? And I told you guys that this was a prophecy of something that happened. It's like the twin flames saw before the fall of man what was going to happen, and they volunteered to come down into this lower state of consciousness and die a spiritual death here, to be raised up in the end to glory and to wake up the cattle, the sheep. There is a gemstone called the Tiger's Eye. All right, in New Jerusalem, you guys know that there are gemstones that make up the foundation. All right, and that foundation is the 144,000, okay, each stone, all right? And the Tiger's Eye represents the third foundation stone that's mentioned in the Bible in New Jerusalem. Check this out. This Tiger's Eye represents Gemini on the zodiac sign. That is the birthstone of Gemini. And remember, Gemini is the twins, okay? Gemini was the age before the fall, and the fall happened in the age of Taurus, all right? We're now in the age of Aquarius. We're moving into Aquarius. We just left Pisces. Now this is where it really gets wild. While I was video chatting with my mom, my daughter Lindsay comes running in the room. She always draws things for my mother, and she wants her to see it. She brought this drawing. I'm going to show it to you right here. It is so amazing. It's a beautiful, like a queen or a princess. Looks like she has a crown of flowers or whatever. Up top, there's an A with a line under it for Alpha, okay? She wasn't listening in on this. She didn't know what we're talking about. She's 6 years old. She don't understand this stuff, all right? But I noticed that in the area of the belt line of this drawing that she did of this girl, that there was some ink spots that she didn't do. It was an accident. There is nothing accidental, but they were there like as an accident or coincidence. But in this belt line, you could see Orion's belt, and you can see it here. This is so crazy. Orion's belt is located, check this out, between